Let's get started with our big story, and this time we bring it for you in this our second hour of the show. Now, Peter Obi has formally aligned with the African Democratic Congress, ADC, but his entry has triggered a public dispute. One faction of the party has rejected his registration, I beg your pardon, and disowned the Enugu process. Now, what should have been a strategic move now exposes deep cracks within the party structure. This matters beyond personalities. It speaks to how Nigerian parties manage power, who controls internal processes, and how credible they are as platforms for national leadership. And so joining us on the program this morning to give us a bit of insight and analysis, we have Honorable Kenneth Chibuogwu Gbandi. He is the former National Deputy Chairman, ADC Diaspora Engagement, and leader of the ADC Diaspora Network. Also joining us virtually is Professor Sam Amadi. He's the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on. Happy New Year to you, and great Malabites.
Thank you, great Malabites. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Great Malabites.
Let me start with you, Honorable Gbandi, and let's look at this and see the factions as within the ADC. Too young a coalition to now be afflicted with, the disease of factions, as we've seen from all different opposition parties, whether it's with the Labour Party and now the PDP. Who legally has the authority to validate a registration of this magnitude within the ADC? Let's start there.
Well, good morning, great Malabites, and Happy New Year, happy Sunday to all Nigerians all over the world, and also to your viewers. I'm happy to be on your program. And the truth of the matter is that INEC has no issue with ADC as a political party, and the truth of the matter is that genuine internal disagreements are not very unusual in a political setting, which is important that the institutional crisis have a mechanism of managing such crisis. But let's be clear. The internal disagreements are not new in politics, like I said, when they are genuine. So far, I can tell you that currently the ADC, as it is, has no fraction, at least not at the national level. Any fraction of ADC, African Democratic Congress, that exists currently is only in the imagination of anti-democratic forces and their sponsors, who are determined, of course, to undermine the path and the push of what ADC is currently achieving. Let it be on record that just last few weeks, the Federal High Court dismissed a suit brought by such phantom fractions seeking to restrain African Democratic Congress from holding its legitimate national convention. They even suspended me and 14 others, including Shifraf, who was the founding father of ADC. The way it is, I can assure you that ADC, at least at the national level, has no fraction. The fraction that we see on the media today are just phantom fractions.
But phantom factions, but what does this reveal about the strength or weakness of your party's internal organs? How did they get such leverage to the point where the entire nation now knows that the ADC might just be split in the middle?
I give you two critical examples. My very, very good brothers, Edmebu Kachukwu, was our presidential candidate during the last presidential election. He had a very major disagreement with the party. And of course, following the due process of the party, he was actually suspended from the party and eventually actually expelled from the party. But today, he stands and speaks on behalf of ADC, which is totally not correct. I don't know how we can have a mechanism, to regulate an individual that is not a member of the party. And another phantom party is from this current fraction that took the party to court that got the court dismissed. He was a member of the party, a very active member of the party for that matter. But of course, we have disagreement on how probably we should approach the coalition that we are currently going in. And he decided to exit the party after some anti-party activities. He was expelled from the party legitimately by the national organ of the party, endorsed by the National Working Committee. So as far as we are concerned, he's no longer a member of ADC. So going to court, to challenge the legitimacy of the party operation when you are no longer a party, it's something I I don't know how to explain that, and that's why I call them phantom fractions. If there's any fraction within the party, of course there are mechanisms to address such a problem, which is not the case. I mean, we have a couple of disagreement on how the coalition should proceed, but they have been resolved amicably, and you can see that the party is thriving as we're having more and more meaningful Nigerians coming into the coalition.
All right. Let me bring Professor Sam Amadi here. Professor, a very good morning to you and Happy New Year. We've had these conversations, well into 2025. The disease of factionalism, hopefully that's a word, are now being plagued by the ADC. But, I mean, Honorable Gbandi here said that, it's a phantom faction. Do you agree? And most importantly, what does this reveal about opposition as we get into campaign and electoral season full on?
Well, first, let me say that, make some corrections. The idea that Mr. Peter Obi's event in Enugu is illegal is nonsensical. First, that's not a party registration. You see, oftentimes these politicians who claim leadership of parties don't even understand concepts and can't clarify them. When you declare a declaration to join APC or ADC or to even, because Peter Obi claims he is actually part of the coalition. Membership form is what you go and pick in your ward, wherever you want to politically domicile. So yeah, I live in Abuja. I'm from Imo State. I could join ADC, join them by picking a registration form in Imo State or wherever, for example. Or I could pick a form in Abuja. So when I pick a form, that's where my membership is domiciled. That's my ward, political ward. Again, so what happened in Enugu is not anything about registration. So there's a lot of illiteracy about this, and that suggests that these guys are politically conscripted. These are people who are doing a political hashtag job, because clearly Mr. Peter Obi and those who came with him did a political declaration, just like anybody can decide to declare his own run for presidency from Lagos, from anywhere. That's number one. So nothing is laughable to talk about legality or illegality. That does not mean it's right or wrong. Mr. Peter Obi, we need to pick a form, a membership card. Whether he has done that, I don't know. That's what makes him a full member. And then when I say who issued it and who signed it. The second point is around this notion about crisis. Look, I can go and claim to be the national chairman of APC right now. And if I have media, spotlight, and that's a problem. These guys just go and issue statements and hog the media and create a sense as if there's a real crisis. Look, ADC as a coalition is settled. INEC has recognized David Mark-led executive, just like you have APC led by the professor who is recognized. Now, PDP and Labour has had problem because the members of those parties, the leaders are divided in some ways. And clearly, we never had parties so destabilized before 2023. Under Buhari, with all his, people can argue it was dictatorial, authoritarian, maybe competent or incompetent, but Buhari never bothered about other political parties, what they're going to do. But Tinubu's political script book is based on first disarraying the opposition, and that's very clear. It's a political rule book they're playing.
Right.
That's the place why the Labour Party. And then
Professor Amadi, I hate to cut you. You're making a very solid point there, but I want to put a pin on it because we need to go on a short break. When we come back, I will let you continue on that thought, and then I'll give Honorable Gbandi a right to reply. Let's go on a short break. You're watching Breakfast Extra. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. Now, earlier before the break, we were talking about the official defection of Peter Obi, who is now fully registered with the ADC. Now, a faction has come out to reject that registration. Well, joining us earlier was Honorable Kenneth Gbandi. He is the former National Deputy Chairman of the ADC Diaspora Engagement. Also with us is Professor Sam Amadi, Director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Now, Professor Amadi, before the break, you were, sharing your opinion on just comparing notes on the President Tinubu's approach to dissent and opposition versus President Tinubu's administration's approach to to opposition and dissent. Please continue with your submission.
Thank you. I was trying to say that though President Buhari was APC leader, was often seen as authoritarian and dictatorial and had military background, to his credit, his strategy for second term didn't involve direct, effort at destabilizing or, seducing or causing crisis in the political parties. He may have, people argue, perhaps won election with some foul strategy, but it was largely respectful of those parties. So what we have seen since 2023 has been escalation of a strategy that based on don't allow any credible platform to exist. And so you can see from the Labour Party, you can see that from nowhere, the crisis was manufactured, and the allegation is that some of the leaders in this government are part of financing and strengthening that division. Now we see PDP, where a top leader in this government and someone who has taken upon himself, even more than the national chairman of the party, to sing around how Tinubu must come back. And so for the first time, we've seen a man who claims ownership of the political party, the PDP, and say he owns this party. He brought everybody. He's the one who should be the leader, saying clearly, we don't want to run an election against Tinubu. After Tinubu will resurrect. So it's just a strategy. I don't know, it might work for the president, but it's going to definitely destroy politics and democracy in Nigeria. He has destroyed it. So you've seen somebody will come up tomorrow. If tomorrow the coalition guys move to SDP or move to whatever party, you will see somebody come up and say, that's my party, challenge. Maybe there's no crisis, he'll create a crisis, and then that crisis will have official support, war chest, the Scots, INEC will play dead brain and look for irrelevant legalese and rules to stalemate and not be decisive. So it's really a crisis founded on three things. One, the strategic engagement of this government, President Tinubu. Two, the fact of hunger and greed. Many people have alleged financial inducement, big numbers, that forces governors who have safe seats. I can understand people shopping for a platform to win election if they are safe seat. I can also understand people, I don't understand somebody who is not running for re-election being so desperate to join the ruling party. So all this conjure an idea that the democracy in Nigeria, even as distorted as it has been, even as maybe undemocratic as it has been, is further threatened to the point that it's difficult to foresee or predict whether we're going to have at least de facto two strong parties. And that's really what Democrats care about. Look, democracy in Nigeria is deficient in fundamental ways. So winning election doesn't cure the crisis of Nigerian democracy. But like I argue, even if everything fails, even if elections, those who govern don't do anything, there should be at any time in an electoral democracy at least two strong parties that can alternate. It creates a disciplinary effect on governance. So everybody knows, and that's what's electoral democracy, the possibility, as the first person have said, that you can lose an election and be made to leave power. So now, if we're going to have only one party, and everybody's working hard to make sure there's no credible platform or candidate to challenge an incumbent who has all the resources, all the state apparatus, and still very, very frightened that there should be a party. I think all of us, despite of our political persuasion or preferences, would say this is going too far. You need to allow ADC to stand, not because ADC is better than APC or their candidate, whoever is going to be is better, but for the mere fact that we should be able to have real, actual choices to make. And those real, actual choices will force the parties to develop strategic response to voters, to win them. Right now, what they want is that the president will not even campaign, maybe because of his apparent ill health. He doesn't have the energy or stamina to go around. So we're going to have proxy governors, close down the space, parties that cannot campaign, and then we'll have a fait accompli. Everyone just go, you know what, give it up. So we'll start home, and 15% or 10% of the population will elect a president who will score 32% of the votes. I mean, that's not democracy. That's not democracy.
You paint a very gory picture here, showing that that the voter turnout will again reduce. I mean, we saw that during the by-elections last year and off-cycle elections, and that means that going into 2027, those numbers will still dwindle even more. But I do have to ask about this phantom faction that we're seeing now, as Honorable Gbandi described, within the party and rejecting the registration of Mr. Peter Obi. Also, another person who's rejected this move as well is, Professor Pat Utomi, the economist and former presidential candidate, who has rejected this registration and saying that he would not throw his support behind Peter Obi. Seeing this type of figures and this type of statements and rhetoric come out just going into campaign season, one has to ask what it means for the credibility of the party towards the voters or the perception of voters.
Just quickly, first, Pat Utomi's view is different. Pat says, look, I will support Peter in ADC as long as he's the candidate. Pat is rejecting the notion.
Yes, as vice president, forgive me. Yeah.
Exactly. So the ADC is not Atiku Abubakar, even though people believe he is in charge. Let's leave that. But to the credibility, you see, again, here's a problem. Voter turnout will be low if they don't have clear choices. Those who think that Tinubu has failed and cannot be persuaded otherwise would opt out of the election. That's the argument of the obedience, who say, if you have Peter Obi, he will energize the voter to come out and vote against the incumbent. But if you create semblances of the incumbent, people who look like the incumbent, then reasonable voters, you see, in every election, there are captive voters, those who, it doesn't matter, they're ADC, they're PDP, they're APC, they vote their party. Even the party brings the worst candidate. But most people, even in America, the moderates decide the election. Most people who vote are principled voters. They're probably voting on issue, they're voting on personality. So the argument here is, if ADC does not differentiate itself by presenting a credible message embodied by their candidate that they are going to disrupt and reverse Tinubu's quote-unquote failure, then most of these enlightened electorates will be discouraged. So you need enthusiasm to vote out an incumbent that's cynical. And that will likely, we saw what happened in the off-season election. Vote buying will be a mainstay of the political playbook of the ruling party or even other parties. So, but vote buying works if there's no voter party. So if you have in a state 1 million people voting, how are you going to buy 1 million people? So usually if you have only 300,000 people voting, you could safely buy 250,000 and go to sleep. You win. So the first thing is, are we going to see the level of enthusiasm we saw in 2023? Are we going to see no voter disenfranchisement? Is either going to make the voting process easy, because you can't tell Nigerians to stay on the line for 5 hours to vote when they don't even have assurance that their life will be better. People are cynical. People just have been brutalized by policy, by irresponsible governance across board, state and federal government. So their threshold is low, their pain threshold and their patience threshold is very low. So if I'm going to vote, and that means coming by 7, stay till 4, that's a sacrifice that many Nigerians may not make. So there are many dynamics here that will determine the voter output, which is the candidates, their messaging, the fact that they're going to speak to the young youth population as the bedrock of election, and the fact that the voting process is itself friendly, so that people will not, spend the whole day. I mean, we don't have carnivals. If you're going to bring masquerade and music and the video, then they could stay in the line for 5-6 hours. But if you're going to be there, dusty, very dry, very inconveniencing environment, and you keep them there for 5-6 hours, So go home and say, you know what the heck?
Right.
So this is the point that I just want to make.
Yeah, let me come to you very quickly, Honorable Gbandi, because we're pretty much pressed for time here. First of all, Professor Amadi said that, you know, the registration process, or that ceremony that we saw with Mr. Peter Obi, was pretty much to him, you know, just to signify his membership or his joining to the coalition, not necessarily a proper registration exercise that should be done in his constituents. I want you to reply to that, but also more importantly, every critic, you know, and analyst have said that the undoing of the ADC will be who will anchor or who will lead from the front with the party, whether it would be Atiku Abubakar or Mr. Peter Obi or Rotimi Amechi or El Rufai, heavyweights with their own loyal camp. But who will lead the party, and will it be its undoing? Very quickly.
Well, I think I agree with my senior Malawitan colleague, Professor Sam Amadi. Peter Obi said it himself. Although I'm not the spokesperson for Peter Obi, he said he was answering to critics that he's a member of the coalition, a member of the ADC. So what we've just seen in Enugu is just an official declaration, you know, to make it more official, and not that he's going to pick up the form there. I think picking up the form from your ward, from your state, is the first point of entrance into any political party. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm not a spokesperson for me. I'm sure they must have done that. With regards to critics, Prof was also very correct. We have never had it so bad in Nigeria, where you see basically the whole state structure. Take Delta State, for instance, where they slept as PDP and woke up as APC. It has never happened in the history of Nigeria. A whole state structure collapse for a political party. And this is because the current political leadership in Nigeria under APC are more interested in securing second term than governing the country. Let it be very clear. You see, the 2027 election will not be decided by party dominance alone, which is exactly what the APC is trying to do. Let us not forget that Peter Obi won so many states when he has no single governor in that state. But this 2027 election will be won by credibility and the ability to reconnect with Nigerians who are increasingly disillusioned as hunger and unemployment over taxation reign supreme in the land. Yes, ADC is positioning itself not merely to participate in 2027 election, but to compete meaningfully by offering clear alternative, a different political culture from APC and PDP duopoly that we have in Nigeria over the years. ADC is not only having a robust functional structure across the state, like what the critics are saying that ADC is not, they don't have a structure and the rest of them. But we're not only in Nigeria, they have a strong structure. We have an active diaspora ADC network, which I'm currently the leader, and also we have a network of youths across the federation in diaspora. So the ADC has positioned itself, for 2027, no doubt. But let us be honest. With regards to Peter Obi, Peter Obi represents a movement in Nigeria. Today, it's little wonder that it's the hottest political bride in the country. And so he brings in political capital and, not just personal, popularity. What is important is that the ADC has positioned itself different from APC, where we have shown that ADC is a new party that cares for Nigerians, especially people with disability. As you can see, it's the only political party that is even having a leader with disability. ADC has positioned itself as the reaching out for all-inclusive political participation. In diaspora, for instance, the ADC referred to diaspora as the seventh geopolitical zone compared to the Nigerian geopolitical zone. In ADC, we have clear rules for the youths and women who have 35% mandatory reservation for all the political parties. So if you look at all these fractions, if you look at all this, you understand that what the current political party APC is trying to do is to cause a lot of distractions, a lot of problem within the party by manufacturing phantom opposition. And like Prof said, you can hardly don't do anything about it, because the fact that anybody can claim up tomorrow and claim the leadership of any political party, and the most funny thing is that they are being sponsored, from this government, giving them media visibility, giving them a lot of outreach. And so the entire ADC is out to give a different political narrative, and the fact that the current ruling political party is manufacturing all form of intimidation, including targeting opposition leaders like the former Attorney General of the Federation, and anybody who speaks out. The speed with which they go after those political party shows only one thing: sign of panic. The current ADC is panicking, and like Prof said, their inability to convince Nigeria, their inability to show that over-taxation of Nigeria is a policy that's very popular in Nigeria, the inability to end hunger in the country has left them with only one option, which is to destabilize the opposition party.
All right. The stabilization of the opposition party, very quickly, what precedents does this set for future administrations? Professor Amadi, we're out of time. Very quickly, sir.
Well, I think it's going to be, maybe can encourage them to say, you know what, we can do it. They did it, it worked. If it works, that's why it's bad. But if the opposition party wins, then maybe they could say, maybe we shouldn't follow this rule book. We won because they failed. Or they could say, you know what, we need it. It's really bad. It can be contagious. And that's why we know that in politics, presidents are followed, especially if they are rewarded with success, quote unquote. So if the dark art wins you the presidency, then next time around, people will take a darker version of your dark art to reap power. And the ultimate loss would be that democracy in Nigeria will falter finally. And unfortunately, without democracy, Nigeria is a weak state. It's not coherent. It can't have development. So Nigerian development prospect lies in recovering sensible and well-directed politics. And right now, we are not there.
All right. Gentlemen and great Malabites, I must say thank you for taking out the time to join us. Professor Sam Amadi, the Director for the Abuja School of Politics and Thought, and also to you as well, Honorable Gbandi, who is the ADC leader for Diaspora Engagement. Gentlemen, once again, thank you and Happy New Year. Thank you so much for coming on.